This is The Core Decision, a series about the quiet choices that shape outcomes, long before anyone notices and long after the noise fades. These are true stories, not about tactics, not about hacks, but about the moments where someone chose control over comfort, ownership over dependency, and long-term leverage over short-term wins. Before we begin, a quick word of context here. The Core Decision is brought to you by Digital Real Estate Blueprint. Not as a pitch and not as a product, but as a philosophy. The real leverage comes from what you own, not what you chase. If this story resonates, you'll understand why. The company made memory. That's what it did. That's what it was known for. That's what built the building, paid the engineers, and put the name on the map. For almost 2 decades, they were the standard. When computers needed to remember something, anything, they reached for this company's product. The chips were small. The margins were good. The customers kept calling. By the early 1980s, the business was pulling in over $1 billion a year, just from memory, just from doing what they'd always done. The founder had moved on to chairman. A new CEO had taken over, a Hungarian immigrant with a sharp tongue and an engineering degree. He didn't smile much. He didn't have to. The numbers smiled for him. The company had a reputation for discipline, for execution, for building things that worked and shipping them on time. Wall Street loved them. Customers trusted them. Employees believed in the mission. And the mission was memory. It said so on the lobby wall. The first signs weren't dramatic. A contract lost here, a price undercut there. The Japanese had entered the market a few years earlier, and their fabs were running hotter, faster, cheaper. Their yields were better. Their quality was tighter. And their government was backing them with subsidies that made competition feel like a rigged game. At first, leadership shrugged it off. We invented this. We own this. They'll hit a ceiling. Well, they didn't. Quarter after quarter, the gap closed. Then it reversed. The company that had defined the market was now losing it, not in a collapse, but in a slow, grinding erosion. Death by 1,000 price cuts. Inside the building, the debate started quietly. Do we invest more? Build new fabs? Cut prices to match? The engineers wanted to fight. They'd built this thing from scratch. Memory was in their blood. Walking away felt like a betrayal. But the CEO wasn't sentimental. He sat in meetings with a yellow legal pad and asked the same question over and over. What would happen if we lost this business entirely? No one wanted to answer. He asked again, what would we do? Where would we go? Someone muttered something about microprocessors, a side project, a growing line, not the core business, but not nothing either. The CEO wrote it down. The tension built slowly. Every board meeting became a referendum on identity. The old guard wanted to double down. Defend the fortress, win back what was theirs. The CEO, he listened, he nodded. He said very little. But privately, he was running the numbers, and the numbers didn't lie. Memory margins had collapsed. The company was bleeding cash on every chip. The Japanese weren't going to slow down, and the fabs needed upgrades that would cost hundreds of millions, with no guarantee of the returns. Meanwhile, the microprocessor business was growing. Not fast, not explosively, but steadily. And the margins were better, much, much better. The CEO started asking a different question in the next meeting. If we were a new company, just starting out today, would we enter the memory business? The answer was obvious and painful. No, they wouldn't. He walked the halls at night sometimes, past the labs, past the posters, past the plaques that told the story of how this company had changed the world. Memory built this place. Memory paid for these walls. Memory was the mission. And now he was thinking about killing it. He told almost no one. Not yet. He needed to be sure. He needed to see if there was another way. There wasn't. The meeting happened in the fall. A conference room, fluorescent lights, a long table with too many chairs. The CEO sat at the head. His senior staff filled the sides. Some of them had been with the company since the beginning. Some had staked their careers on memory. He didn't waste time. We're exiting the memory business. Silence. Not the productive kind of silence, the stunned kind, the kind that fills a room before someone says something they'll regret. One executive spoke first. Voice tight, face red. "You can't be serious." The CEO didn't blink. "I'm serious. That's our identity. That's what we do. It was what we did." The room erupted. Voices overlapped. Arguments collided. Someone slammed a hand on the table. The CEO just let it happen. He didn't interrupt. He didn't defend it. He just waited. When the noise finally died down, he spoke again. "We've been losing this fight for 3 years. We're not going to win. And if we keep pretending we can, we'll lose everything else too." Someone asked about the employees. "Thousands of them, entire divisions, layoffs," the CEO said. "Plant closures. It's going to hurt." Another voice, quieter now. "The analysts will destroy us." "Probably. The press will call it surrender." "Let them." He stood up, meeting over. The announcement hit like a shockwave. Headlines screamed retreat. Analysts downgraded the stock. The competitors gloated. Inside the company, people cleaned out their desks and wondered what the hell had just happened. The CEO didn't explain himself, not publicly, not emotionally. He just kept working. The layoffs were brutal. Entire facilities went dark. Engineers who'd spent a decade perfecting memory fabrication were handed severance packages and shown the door. The company that had defined an industry was walking away from it. And in its place, a bet, a gamble, a pivot to a product line that most people still considered secondary. Microprocessors, the tiny chips that told the computers what to do. The CEO was Andy Grove. The company, well, if you're listening to this on a laptop or a PC, there's a good chance you don't need me to name it. You can look down right now, near the keyboard on the corner of the machine. Yep, you guessed it, Intel. The product they abandoned was DRAM, D-R-A-M, Dynamic Random Access Memory. The thing that made them famous, the thing that made them rich. The product they pivoted to was a microprocessor, specifically the x86 architecture. You've never heard of DRAM unless you're in the industry, but you've heard of Intel. You've seen the sticker on every laptop. You've heard the chime in every commercial. Intel Inside. That slogan didn't exist yet when Grove made the call, but the decision made it possible. By walking away from a dying business, Grove freed up capital, engineers, and focus for the one that mattered. Within a few years, Intel's processors were powering the PC revolution, then the internet, then the modern world. The company didn't just survive, it became essential, not because Grove was lucky, not because he saw a future with perfect clarity, but because he asked a question most leaders avoided. What would we do if we weren't already doing this? And then he did it. There's a difference between owning something and depending on it. Most people never learn the difference. They spend years building inside someone else's walls, trading time for a paycheck, pouring attention into projects that consume but never compound. The work feels productive, the hours disappear, but effort alone doesn't build ownership. It just builds someone else's leverage. Grove understood that. Memory was profitable until it wasn't. It was their identity until it became their cage. Holding on would have felt like strength, but it was just fear wearing a suit. The same fear that keeps people clinging to roles that pay but don't multiply, to assets that demand attention but never return it proportionally. Letting go costs employees reputation and sleep, but it gave him leverage. Not the temporary kind that comes from market share or brand recognition, the permanent kind. The kind that comes from controlling something others can't replace. The kind you can't earn by staying too long in the wrong room. Intel just didn't make processors. They made the processors. The ones everyone else had to build around. The ones that set the standard for a generation. That's not margin. That's not revenue. That's ownership. And ownership doesn't come from doing what you've always done. It doesn't come from loyalty to a sinking position. It doesn't come from grinding harder on something that stopped compounding years ago. It comes from knowing when to stop. And that's what really happened.